handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality generally.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 46 after the hour, and we're less than a week away from voting to legalize marijuana in Oregon under Measure 91. The Yes on 91 campaign has bankrolled millions in donations and is airing pro-legalization advertisements on television stations across the state. The No on 91 campaign has bankrolled a measly $168,000. 98% of that from the Oregon State Sheriff's Association and the Oregon Narcotics Enforcement Association, and has aired no TV ads. Unless you count the helpful people at Medford's KTVL, which last night aired a hit piece on legalization that might as well have been a 5-minute ad for the No on Measure 91 campaign. Cops were given free rein to utter all their untrue reefer madness talking points, and the reporter made no attempt to balance the coverage with response from the Yes on Measure 91 campaign. The piece, which was entitled "A High State of Mind, Law Enforcement and the Oregon Liquor Control Commission Discuss Regulatory Changes if Measure 91 Passes," begins with the Klamath County Sheriff, Frank Scraw, saying voting for Measure 91 will mean more deaths on Oregon roads. Quote, "There's enough carnage on the highway, we sure as heck don't need any more," said Sheriff Scraw in full uniform for the cameras. Evidence, perhaps? We don't need no stinking evidence. It's not as if there's already 2 states that have legalized marijuana, and both of them have declining rates of traffic fatalities. It's not as if the reporter could have checked some unknown small-town newspaper like, say, the Washington Post to prove Sheriff Scraw wrong in his prediction. Sheriff Scraw was allowed to continue, unfact-checked, as he intoned how much enforcement costs would rise under legalization. Quote, "You need a DRE, a drug recognition expert. That requires additional training. That requires additional time. That requires bringing that DRE in to give the folks that are arrested a different set of sobriety examinations, and the cost of that's going to be astronomical." End quote, said Sheriff Scraw. Astronomical? You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. If the reporter had bothered to read Measure 91, she could have pointed out that 35% of the tax revenue coming from Measure 91 goes to law enforcement, particularly to help them hire and train more DREs. Sheriff Scraw's astronomical cost was estimated by the Secretary of State's office to be $400,000 annually for 3 new highway interdiction team members, training of all advanced roadside impairment driving enforcement, and training of drug recognition experts. Whereas Measure 91 is estimated to bring in $17 to $40 million annually. Next in the KTVL report, the chair of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, Rob Patridge, complained about the lack of a per se THC in blood standard to measure driving impairment. Quote, "Just like there's .08 for alcohol, that is not included in this particular measure," end quote, said Patridge. The truth? You can't handle the truth. I mean, he's right insofar as Measure 91 lacks a per se THC standard. But was there any mention of the fact that THC isn't like alcohol and no scientific standard exists? Did they bother to mention that driving while high is a crime that cops bust people for now, even without a standard? And did they bother to mention that Measure 91 dedicates funds to the study of a scientific, reliable standard? No. Then, the chair of the OLCC, who really should know better, claims that Measure 91 is going to allow unlimited pot shops throughout the state and that anyone can hold any number and any type of marijuana licenses. Quote, you can be a producer, a distributor, and a wholesaler and sell. So you can hold all 4 licenses, end quote, said Patridge. Well, that leads me to ask, why isn't there a bar and a liquor store on every block in Oregon? Oh, because the OLCC has the regulatory authority to limit them, just as they are given that authority to limit pot shops under Measure 91. Too bad that reporter's not as familiar with the liquor laws as Rob Patridge should be, who knows damn well that you can be a producer, distributor, wholesaler, and seller if you're one of Oregon's many craft brewers or vintners. And maybe that reporter would have pointed out that Measure 91 treats marijuana exactly the same way. The OLCC chair, Patridge, continues in this KTVL hit piece by lamenting that they, and not the federal government, will oversee the packaging and labeling of marijuana products. Quote, it's new ground and new territory for Oregon and in the United States. We're going to look to Washington and Colorado to see what they've done, but we're going to do it Oregon's way, said Patridge. Labeling, packaging, and testing marijuana is only new ground for the OLCC. The reporter fails to mention the fact that the Oregon Health Authority and the Department of Agriculture will be assisting OLCC in the labeling, packaging, and testing, and that the OHA has now had over a year's experience labeling, packaging, and testing medical marijuana. Next, KTVL turns to Jackson County District Attorney Beth Heckert, who's allowed to slam marijuana edibles while pictures of Halloween scenes appear on the screen. Quote, our whole point is no one under 21 is going to be using this product, so why are we making them so attractive to children? Said Heckert. Where is this planet where adults don't like gummy bears? These are products that are sold now in Oregon medical marijuana dispensaries where you have to be 21 to enter, where your ID is checked at the point of sale, and where the products won't leave the store unless they're in opaque, child-proof containers. Those are the rules the OHA mandated, and there's no reason to think that they wouldn't mandate them for recreational products, especially since Section 7 of Measure 91 gives OLCC all the authority they need to prohibit any marketing, any packaging, or any advertising that would appeal to kids. Next, in the KTVL 5-minute free ad against Measure 91, the district attorney complains about the smell that might come with home marijuana gardens come harvest time. Quote, they can't open their windows. They can't go out and enjoy their backyard because of the odor. End quote, explained Heckert. Why do opponents of Measure 91 think that legalizing marijuana repeals all other laws? There are currently laws against creating public nuisances. You can bet if I piled 100 pounds of pig manure in my backyard, the city would have plenty of codes and ordinances to force me to clean it all up. If someone's garden is causing a nuisance, the city can already deal with it. KTVL returns to the OLCC chair, Patridge, who then laments the fact that the OLCC hasn't studied marijuana yet. Quote, by Oregon law, we're restricted at the Liquor Control Commission. You can't spend the liquor money on non-liquor regulatory things. We certainly have had the opportunity as part of what we're doing to study that, but we can't go out and spend money on a ballot measure unless it passes, end quote, says Patridge. Right. And when Measure 91 does pass, the OLCC is given plenty of money, and until July 1st, 2015, before the law is in effect, and until January 1st, 2016, to study, create, and promulgate the rules on marijuana. You'd think a reporter who read Measure 91 would bring up the fact that OLCC will have over a year of study before the first legal pot is sold. Next, KTVL, in their 5-minute hit piece on Measure 91, returns to Sheriff Scraw, who isn't sanguine on the idea that taxing marijuana will reap any money for his department. Quote, I mean, I believe in the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny too. Come on, said Scraw. District Attorney Heckert added, quote, I'm just skeptical that there would be a big influx of money, but time will tell, end quote. Show me the money. Show me the money. Well, you remember how Sheriff Scraw figured that $400,000 in costs was astronomical? Well, once again, here's the opportunity for the reporter to ask Sheriff Scraw and DA Heckert what adjective they'd use to describe the $17 million to $40 million that the Secretary of State's office estimates Measure 91 will reap, or to mention the fact that 35% of the money will be going to law enforcement. It'd also be nice to mention that the tax revenue in Washington and Colorado keeps increasing month by month. District Attorney Heckert concludes by implying that legalization of marijuana isn't going to reduce the workload of cops and courts. Quote, "You're still going to have people growing on public lands. You're still going to have people transporting it across state lines and receiving the money back, and all of those issues that we currently prosecute. Those cases are not going to go away because of Measure 91. End quote, said Heckert. Well, surprise! Marijuana legalization does not end all crime. But what Measure 91 does is ensures that up to 13,000 Oregonians don't get tickets or arrests for personal marijuana possession and cultivation. The reporter might have mentioned that in Washington, arrests for personal possession declined from over 5,000 a year to under 200. In Colorado, the monthly arrests for all marijuana offenses declined from roughly 700 a month to about 130. Now, KTVL is in Medford. Medford is in Jackson County. Jackson County is in southern Oregon, and it's part of the so-called Emerald Triangle region of America, where the best marijuana on earth is cultivated. There is high-intensity drug trafficking area designation for those parts, which leads to a lot of federal grant money for law enforcement. In the most recent Oregon Asset Forfeiture Report, the Medford Police Department netted over $213,000 in seized cash and property, and District Attorney Heckert's office netted over $42,000. So it's easy to understand why law enforcement in Southern Oregon is spreading falsehoods and scares about marijuana legalization. It's their job, and to some extent, their budget on the line. But once law enforcers leave that job, they're free to express what 30 former law enforcers recently told news organizations in Northern Oregon. Treating marijuana use as a crime in Oregon has failed, and it's time to vote yes on Measure 91. But what I have trouble understanding is why a journalist would produce such a one-sided hit piece to help law enforcement spread their message on television, and why a news station would let her do so without affording the opposition a chance to rebut. After all, KTVL is a CBS affiliate, not Fox News. So, got a few problems with that. We'll have a link for that. This entire rant is up at radicalruss.com with links to the original video from the news piece that aired last night. I also have this written up on Huffington Post Media. If you check out the Huffington Post Media page, you'll find it there. Please like it, share it, upvote it, whatever it is we got to do. Because this kind of monkeying around with our elections should not be allowed to stand. In Hour 2, I'll tell you a little bit about KTVL and its ownership, and maybe you'll understand a little more why they were so happy to give 5 minutes of free anti-legalization advertising on their news station last night. It's the October surprise. There always is one of them in there. But that's all the time we got for Hour 1. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for Hour 2. We'll get more in depth on this story. I'm Radical Russ. For everyone here at 420radio.org, thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it.